there's always going to be talented kids that come through systems. I think two things that stand out for me is work ethic and coachability. To me, that tells me that we've got a player who wants to learn, wants to get better, is never satisfied, is willing to do the work.
G'day legends and welcome back to the Cricket Mentoring Podcast. We've got a returning guest today, a very special guest, Adam Voges. Welcome to the podcast.
G'day Skulls, nice to be here.
We're very lucky to have Vogesy. He was a fantastic cricketer himself, and now he is a very well-renowned coach and tipped to be the next Australian coach. And he was our second ever guest on the Cricket Mentoring Podcast, which was actually the process of success back then. And a lot has happened since then, Vogesy. I went through a few things. We had you on the podcast. You played your last match in February 2018 for the Scorchers. You still played a little bit for Melville after that. And then we had you on the podcast at the end of that month. And then one of my last questions to you was, what's next? And I think you said, hopefully a little bit of coaching would be good to do. A few months later, you were the head coach of WA and Scorchers with Sandpaper Gate happening, Darren Lehman resigning from the Australian team, Justin Langer moving into the head coach of Australia, and you stepped into that role. Did you feel ready back then, straight out of playing into coaching? Let's go back to that moment.
Yeah, well, I guess you reflect back. That feels like a long time ago that we had that initial conversation, and yeah, at that stage I was in the middle of transitioning out of playing and working out exactly what it was that I wanted to do. I actually got the opportunity to go over and commentate during that South African series, and SEN at the time sold it to me like, come over, watch some cricket for a couple of weeks. What could possibly go wrong? But
I remember you texting us in a group saying there's something gone on here, boys.
Yeah, and who would have known that? I guess the events of that tour would then cascade and present the opportunities that it did for me personally, and I guess to jump into being a full-time head coach straight out of playing probably wasn't the original plan, but sometimes timing and opportunities present themselves, not at the perfect times, but sometimes you've got to be able to make the most of them and take them when they do present. So in answer to your question, was I ready? No, is the really simple answer, but I was passionate about WA cricket. It had been a big part of my life for a long period of time. I felt like I had enough to offer. I felt that I knew the game well enough, and that the other elements of coaching would be the parts that I would need to learn, and certainly had to learn them pretty quickly. Yeah, well, back then I was listening to our previous episode the last few days to prepare for this, and you said you'd done a little bit of coaching with the WA 19s, a tour game, a second limit game. So to then step into a full-time head coach's role was a huge jump. How did it feel back then taking over from Justin Langer? Obviously, JL had brought some success to WA cricket. He was a much-loved Australian and WA cricketer. How did you feel stepping into his shoes? And then how did you have to carve your own sort of culture and way of doing things as opposed to following exactly what he did? Yeah, JL was a huge influence, not just on me personally, but on our whole group. WA cricket was in a pretty bad way when JL took over as head coach. We were probably in the news for the wrong reasons, and success. We'd struggled on the field for a period of time, and JL, to his credit, was able to turn that round over the 5 or 6 years that he was at the helm, and I worked particularly closely with him at the time, being the captain, and so we worked tightly together to try and instill the values of WA cricket and the way that we wanted to go about our work both on and off the field. And so you then jump into the big shoes, and they were big shoes to fill. He'd done a wonderful job, and I guess for me, I took a lot of the lessons that JL instilled, and probably for the first 12 months I probably tried to be like JL, and it took me a little while to work out that was just not going to work for me. While we have similar values and similar ways of doing things, we're very different personalities, and so that was one of the big parts of my learning in that first 12 months of being coach, is that authenticity is everything in coaching, and being true to who you are as a leader and as a coach is really important. just took me 12 months to work that out.
Yeah, well, you've worked it out pretty well. You've had a lot of success since then, but it wasn't always smooth sailing. I know there was a period where I think the Scorchers might have lost the first 4 games of one season, and people were starting to question whether you were the right man for the job. And obviously, you've had an amazing 3 seasons, the last 3 years, with 3 Sheffield Shield titles, 3 Marsh Cup titles, 2 Big Bash titles. What are you like now versus what you were like back then, and what's evolved in you as a coach?
Yeah, you're spot on. It certainly wasn't all smooth sailing. We went from consistently making finals in the Big Bash to my first year we won the wooden spoon. We finished last. We missed finals the next year, and then we, as you mentioned, we dropped the first 4 games of the season after, and there was some articles written, and the heat was being applied. I was in the last year of my deal as well, as head coach, and it certainly wasn't smooth sailing. But you learn a lot during those tough periods. Probably you learn more about what not to do, and so they were the learnings that I needed to take in those first couple of years, and then be able to apply them moving forward. So again, how am I different as a coach now? I think I've just learned a lot of different lessons, good and bad, over the last 6 years, and that's helped shape and form how we go about things on a daily basis, how I go about things, how I work with my players, with our assistant coaches, with our broader staff within WA cricket. And so it's not 1 or 2 things, it's a lot of little different things that you have to go through some tough experiences to learn. I think it also keeps you grounded. It absolutely makes you appreciate the success that we've been able to have over the last period of time, and long may that continue. But it also grounds you and makes you realise that there are some tough times in coaching as well, and it can change pretty quickly as well.
Absolutely, and with every success, there's always a lot of struggle, and people look at what you've done over the last 3 years, and they probably oversee the tough first couple of years where no doubt you were doubting yourself a bit, the outside world was doubting you, etc. But moving into the IPL, which you've just returned from, you've spent 7 weeks over with Lucknow under JL, under Justin Langer, your good mate. How was that experience? And you played in the IPL back in 2010. Was it as you remembered it, or has the game, the IPL in particular, evolved significantly since then?
It's evolved 100% in terms of the way that teams and players go about things. It's more professional than what I certainly remember it 14 years ago. But the glamour, the glitz, the enormity of the IPL is something that I knew about, but was given a really strong reminder of once I got over there. And it's a wonderful competition. It's an incredibly tough competition to win. There's no bad teams. You've got to turn up day in, day out if you want to be like what KKR are and get the job done and win the title. So thoroughly enjoyed my experience. I always love going over to India and experiencing the culture and the people and the food and the cricket and everything that goes with the country. So had a wonderful time. Nice to be home, as always, but yeah, terrific experience.
And the game has just evolved incredibly, hasn't it? We were talking last week about batting, and batting being average score being sort of 250 or 240 odd, and I don't know the exact number, but what is it that can happen, do you think, in the game to sort of... Do you think that's a good thing, firstly? Do you think it's a good thing that there's just more and more runs being scored? It seems like that's what the IPL want. They just want as big a score as possible. What kid's going to want to be a bowler these days? Mind you, I did hear Sam Billings say, well, just check the auction table. The bowlers aren't complaining too much. But what do you think can change in the game? Does the game need to change? You had a good idea at the gym last week, but what do you think could change? Yeah,
I think what we have seen over the last couple of months is a genuine evolution in the game, and particularly in the way batters are going about it. There's a genuinely fearless approach around the way top order batters are attacking the power play, the new ball at the top of the order. And I think there's a couple of factors because of that. No doubt the impact sub rule in the IPL plays a part. You've got more depth. You're effectively playing 12 players, so you've got more depth within your batting, and most teams have got genuine batters coming in at 7, 8, even 9 sometimes. So when you know you've got that depth behind you, I think that fearlessness is easier to do. But in terms of the average scores and the way that they've gone up, I don't know the exact stats, but when you get 200 plus and you don't feel like you've got enough, that's how the game sort of started to evolve. And we've seen the batting group really change that evolution. I think the bowlers are a little bit slow to catch up. But having said that, you've got amazing wickets, small boundaries, and fearless batting orders that they're coming up against. So it's no doubt it's hard work for the bowlers. But as you mentioned just before, the highest paid players in the IPL are the bowlers, and Mitchell Starc, who went for that record amount in the last auction, has just helped Calcutta win the title. So they probably see that as a really good investment. But I think there will be a recalibration. I don't think that we're going to keep seeing these scores, these 260, 270 scores on a regular basis. There's always going to be a recalibration. We saw 2 bounces and over be introduced this year. I don't know if teams use that effectively enough. But the idea that I did mention to you the other day was, well, maybe we'd just give a little bit more wiggle room in terms of the wides, because sometimes there's nowhere to hide as a bowler, and there was some good execution of wide Yorkers that may just cross the line and be called wide, and they've got to bowl it again. So if you gave them an inch either way and just a little bit more wiggle room, well, that's just something that just puts it back in the bowler's favour a little bit. But ultimately, I think the wickets that you play on and the boundary sizes ultimately determine how big a score you're going to get.
Yeah, well, I'm not a bowler, but I think, how do the bowlers evolve? I feel like it has to be a few rule changes or something, because bowlers have got slower balls. Obviously, the rule change of the bounces helps. I love the idea of a slightly wide line, but yeah, I don't know where the bowlers go. Do they go to learning new knuckleballs or whatever? But Mitchell Starc's an amazing story. He started, obviously was the most expensive player in the auction. Millions and millions of dollars. He started the IPL really poorly. When I was over in India, he was going around the park and there was a lot of media and outside noise around his sort of price and what his results were delivering. But then he seemed to build into the IPL as he went on. And he, as you say, was a huge part of KKR winning the title. Man of the match in the final, I think. And they would say that was a good investment. If you were head coach in those early stages of the tournament when Stark's struggling, how do you help a player who's maybe not playing at their best in that sort of situation?
Yeah, I think you've always got to put things in context as well. Starkey was always bowling the hard overs. He was bowling up front in the power play. He was bowling the death overs. So he was doing the hard work. And in T20 cricket, it's not always going to work. And I'm a big believer, particularly in tournament play, you've got to be playing your best cricket at the back end. And if that means that there's a gradual build in, they were still winning games of cricket as well. And I think that makes decision-making a little bit easier when you're still getting the results that you want. But they brought him in for a specific reason. And again, your experienced bowlers are worth their weight in gold in T20 cricket. And maybe he didn't quite execute as well as he possibly could at the beginning, but you could see him just start to get better and better. And there was a moment in one of the games where he finished a game off and bowled one of the opposition teams out, and you could see some genuine emotion in some of his celebrations, and you could just see that he was starting to really start to warm up, and from that moment he got better and better, and like you say, led Calcutta to the title the other day.
What's it like being in the dugout or in the change rooms during these IPL games? And you talk about the fearlessness of the batters at the top order attacking the power play, but also in the middle order. And you had amazing players, Nicholas Paran and Marcus Stoinis in your team. Is it just the belief that we can win from anywhere? It's 70 off 20, we can win. Like, is it just never give up, we can do it mentality?
Yeah, absolutely. We had a great run chase against Chennai. I think we chased down 214, 215, and I think we needed 70 off 30 balls at the back end. But you just keep building belief that if you've got set batters out there at the back end, that any total's achievable. And that's, I think, how the game has developed and evolved over time, is that 10 and over, 15 years ago was, we're not getting these. Whereas 10 and over now, the bowlers are going, how are we going to be able to defend this? And that's just the evolution of the game. And again, T20 cricket's about backing your skills and backing your strengths, but backing the right matchups as well, and that partnership batting that the batters we saw throughout the tournament. And it's just reminding the guys about their method, and so that they're really clear when they go out there, and then it's just about executing as well as they can.
So give us an insight into someone who bats in the middle order in T20 cricket, how they prepare. Someone like Pooran, who's world class, one of the best in the world in the middle as a finisher. Does he just walk into a centre wicket or a net session, just try and bomb every ball for six, or is he doing any underarms, grooving his shape, or like how does someone like he prepare, having spent the last sort of 7 weeks with Pooran in particular?
Yeah, no, he's pretty specific in his preparations. He'll go through some certain drill work, some just making sure that he's watching the ball really closely onto his bat, which I loved watching him do that.
Is that underarms, or how's he doing the drills?
That's just some throws, some throws out of the hand, and or even out of the wanger, out of the flicker, and. But then he gets into really specific mode because he knows how teams are going to try and attack him. And it was really evident every time he walked out to bat, a wide Yorker field got set. There was at least 3, sometimes 4 out on the offside. So he knows how teams are going to try and attack him, and he's really specific in his training about that. And we saw it. Like, they had 4 out on the offside, he still kept hitting them over point for 6, but then was ready to, if they did come straight through either bluff or through misexecution, that he was ready to hurt them straight or over the leg side as well. So all the guys they're very deep thinkers about the game. They understand what the opposition are trying to do to them. They know their strengths, and they know their matchups as well. Another great example of Nicholas Pooran was, we played against Delhi, and Axar Patel was bowling in the power play and got Marcus Stoinis out first ball. So Nicky walks out with 5 balls to go in the 5th over and hits his first 3 balls for 6-4-6 because he knows that's his matchup, and that's the one that he wants to try and target. And it doesn't matter if it's his first ball or his 10th ball, that's his matchup, and that's what he's going with. So it takes a great deal of skill to do that. It takes a great deal of courage to be able to do that. But we see these guys execute it more than not.
And so much trust in themselves, right? Like they've trained it, and then they can walk out and trust it on the biggest stage. You mentioned there how they all know their own game. They're all doing their own planning, knowing their own matchups. Tell us a little bit about in the IPL or in the Big Bash, how much planning from a coaching staff goes into into a match, and then how much conversation happens as a group. So each individual has their own plan, but are you guys sitting in a room with footage and saying this is what they do, then this is what they do, or how much detail goes into planning?
Yeah, everyone's different, particularly from a bowling point of view. So us as coaches, we're here to facilitate and provide as much or as little information as the guys want. Absolutely, from an opposition batting point of view, there's a lot of planning that goes into understanding how we're trying to take wickets, how we're trying to restrict if we need to, where are the certain areas that opposition players are trying to score. But you've got to also mix that in with what are your strengths and how are you trying to play the best game that you can. So, and then it's just being able to combine all that information and give snippets to the players if and when they do need it. So, and like I say, everyone's different. Some guys want a heap of information, others want none. And so that's part of the art of coaching, is understanding your different players and how do you help try and give them the best opportunity to go out and perform, and that looks different for everyone.
And is that something that's evolved in your coaching from the start, is better understanding people and trying to like really sort of, instead of, and obviously I'm quite close with Chris Rogers, who's in the same position you are for Victoria, and we talk a lot about his coaching, and is it something that's evolved in you, is really trying to say, what does this each individual need, as opposed to, I know what worked for me, this is what I'm going to give everyone, sort of thing? Yeah,
that's spot on. It's there's no one size fits all, and that's the art of your program and your assistant coaches and everything that goes into what you're trying to achieve. But there's always a structure around that, but there needs to be enough flexibility so that you can help service individually.
And so, talking structure, a lot of your time is sort of planning and overseeing the whole program. As head coach now, you've got a fantastic batting coach in Bo Casson and bowling coach in Tim McDonald. How much, like, are you doing much technical coaching with players these days, or are you sort of doing all the game day stuff and all the prep and all the planning? How much as a head coach are you hands-on, I suppose?
Not as much as I'd like to be is the simple answer. I like getting my hands dirty. I like working one-on-one with the players, but also understanding that I've got wonderful assistant coaches who do a great job in that space. And so more just collaborating with those guys as to how they're going about it and giving my thoughts. I see my role as more overseeing the whole program, because I feel if I narrow in too much, particularly in a group session, if I narrow my focus too much on one player, then I'm missing what the other 20 are doing. And there's always time outside of our sessions to do a little bit of individual stuff with guys, but when we're in group session, a lot of the time I'm taking a bit more of a broader view of what's going on and just making sure that I've got eyes on everyone.
When we spoke at the start, we spoke about transitioning from being a player very quickly into the head coach role. Was it a bit of an eye-opener of how much work went into being a head coach? Obviously, as a player, you show up, you do your training, you do what you need to do, and you were captain at the end. You were obviously helping others and doing more as a leader. But then did it sort of shock you how much work goes into setting the whole program up?
Yeah, well, you don't know what you don't know. So I went in eyes wide open. I spoke to Justin about transitioning into coaching, and he said the cricket side of things you'll be absolutely fine. It's the planning, it's the preparing, it's the reviewing, it's all the other stuff that as a player you don't necessarily see happen in the background that does take up a lot of your time and your focus and your energy. So that's again the evolution of my coaching and my learnings and understandings about what a head coach actually is and the different roles and responsibilities. So, yeah, unfortunately, it's not just about turning up and throwing a couple of balls to the guys and setting some fielding drills. There's a little bit more to it than that, but it's good fun at the same time.
Yeah, and when we talk often at the gym, it's sort of, you say, like, we've got a meeting with the S&C coach and the physio. You've got to be across the whole picture, don't you?
Yeah, that's your whole program. That's every little detail that we put into our program, whether it's actually the skill side of things, the physical side of things, the mental side of things, leadership. How do we help keep evolving our young players to become great people as well as great cricketers? So there's different facets and elements of our program that hopefully give a holistic approach to each of our athletes, and being across all of that is a big part of my job.
I know, having spoken to Buck a lot, knew that your part of your role is trying to win games and win cricket for WA, but also developing Australian cricketers, and that's something WA Cricket's done for a long time. There's probably 6 or 7 or 8 guys in your program, maybe more, that go in and out of the Australian side, a few regulars. But how do you juggle that? How do you juggle with, we want to win, but it's also we want to create good cricketers for Australia?
Yeah, you hope they come hand in hand. It's incredibly hard to do both at the same time, I believe. We're just fortunate at the moment that we've got an incredible amount of depth within our squad, so that if we do lose a number of players to national selection, that we've got players ready to go. And that's been a big part of why we've had the success that we've had over the last couple of years, because we've seen an increase in the number of guys starting to get picked for Australia, which is brilliant. And it's probably 50-50 in terms of results and developing those cricketers. So whether you can do them equally at the same time, that's always the challenge. But I get just as much satisfaction as seeing Aaron Hardy make his ODI debut last year, or Lance Morris make his ODI debut last year, as what I do with WA winning a game of cricket. So it's a balance. If you can do both, great, but that's the juggling part.
So what are your coaching values?
I guess they evolve at different stages. I think at times they still revolve around the same things, and I think, simply put, they're empowerment, environment, and excellence.
We're just taking a break from this episode for a minute to tell you about the cricket mentoring community. We're on a mission to build the world's best community of cricketers, coaches, and parents. So no matter where in the world you live or what level you're at right now, the cricket mentoring community can help you. If you're committed to your game and serious about becoming the best cricketer you can be and person you can be off the field, then join cricketers from over 24 countries around the world in the cricket mentoring community. Get access to myself and other CM mentors and experts from around the world as we aim to teach you the 6 pillars of success: technical, tactical, mental, emotional, physical, and lifestyle, so that you can become the best you can be. If this excites you and you're ready to take the next step in your journey, then click on the link in the description below and join the cricket mentoring community now.
I got some really good advice from Greg Shippard early on in my coaching journey, and he said the players will ultimately dictate your success as a coach, and so empower them, bring them along for the ride, make sure that they feel invested in what's happening and how we're going about things. And I think that's been a really great lesson to make sure that our guys feel like they have a say in how their program looks and how things go, how they go about their program, their training. Equally, from a head coach point of view, empowering my assistant coaches to do their job, own their space. I know that they can do a great job. I've just got to let them go and do their job. So that's a big part. Environment is just really simply making it a place that everyone wants to come and get better, enjoy being there, create challenge, create a learning environment, but most importantly, make sure that people are having fun, are invested in what we're doing, want to be there, want to keep coming back and getting better. And then excellence is just high performance for me is just the constant pursuit of excellence, and that's what we're always trying to achieve, is whether that's with our skills, physically, mentally, however we're trying to go about things, we're trying to do it to the best of our ability. So they're probably the underlying principles of what we try to do each day.
Brilliant. Well, that's what has obviously bred some success. Fantastic advice from Shippy around the players dictate your success and your career. When you were on our podcast 6 years ago, you spoke about it being a captain and being a leader and trying to be level and enjoying wins, but not making sure everyone's ready for the next game and not getting too low. How have you done that as a coach? Because ultimately it's out of your hands, but your career isn't judged on your runs or your wickets. It's judged on wins and losses. How do you, and have you evolved in that sense as a coach?
Yeah, I'm smiling already because that's probably the biggest change that I had to make early on. I was highly emotional early on in my coaching career, and that was some of the feedback that I got, particularly from the players, is that if the coach is emotional, it's really hard for the players to not be emotional as well and to try and be as level as possible. And so that was something that I needed to go away and work on. I did some work with a mental training skills coach, tried to work on some techniques in terms of in really key pressure moments, how am I behaving? What are people seeing? How do I want to be perceived? How do I change what I'm thinking about internally and actually make sure that everyone else who's in this really high pressure moment is coping okay as well? And so changing that focus has really helped me in terms of dealing with those pressure moments. But it was a transition. I'd get frustrated at times, and so I'd have to leave. I'd walk out of the room, or I'd walk down into a different space and just vent, and then I'd come back. And so I did that for a period of time until I got to the point where I can control reasonably well now, emotionally within those key moments. But it's been a work in progress.
Well, we both love our footy, and it's something that Nathan Buckley had to go through, and I think Damien Hardwick went through as well, and that their evolution then allowed the team to sort of have success. And Craig McRae seems incredibly level. Like, he does give a few fist pumps here and there, but yeah, it's something that I think does rub off massively on the playing group, and something you have to work on. Is the tongue out, is that part of your routine, or that's just a natural thing that you do? Because that's something when the camera pans to you these days, you're often tongue out.
It's a subconscious habit that I do when I'm concentrating. So I've had it my whole life. I try and chew gum so that I don't do it, but my wife takes the mickey out of me regularly about it, so I'm conscious of it. I just can't really do much about it at the moment.
It's a good habit. It's better than blowing up, I guess. But so you mentioned the mental skills training coach during that period. Is that someone you're still working with? And we've spoken before, but give us an understanding of how you're bettering yourself away from your coaching.
Yeah, no, that was just a program I did over a sort of 2 or 3 month period, but certainly still keep in contact with that coach. And from a development point of view, I love talking to people. I love being able to pick the brains of different leaders and different coaches in other sporting codes. And so part of my development is the Elita program, which connects different leaders from different industry together, and we meet on a semi-regular basis. And I can speak to a lady who runs her own real estate business, a guy who manages a resort in the Gold Coast, a lady who's based over in Melbourne, the coach of the Adelaide Thunderbirds in the Super Netball. So different views, different perspectives from leaders in different industries and different teams, and we all seem to face the same challenges. We've all just got different ways of dealing and handling it. So I find that a great outlet to try and problem solve, but trying to learn and grow at the same time. And we've got a number of our guys. Ashton Turner's involved in it. Mitch Marsh is involved in it. There's a number of people around the country that find benefit of being part of these groups and these forums. So it's something that I love. I get energy from it. And hopefully it continues to help with my development.
And when we had you on last time, you mentioned a few of your mentors throughout your playing career. Do you have mentors now as a coach? You've mentioned JL a few times. You just you sort of coached under him, but who do you sort of still have mentors in coaching, and who do you go to chat away from the sort of professional environment, I guess?
Yeah, within and inside and outside of WA cricket, I certainly have trusted people that I like to talk to regularly. Within WA cricket, Kate Harvey's someone that I work incredibly closely with, who's our high performance manager, and we work really closely together, and certainly like to throw ideas at him and vice versa about the program and how we're going. Christina Matthews, as our CEO, was someone that I really enjoyed talking to as well. And then outside, JL has been someone who's been part of my professional career as a player and as a coach now for 20 years nearly. So it's always great to be able to talk to him. And Bobby Muleman's someone that certainly, as I've come more into the coaching side of things, is someone that I can bounce ideas off, and is a step removed from WA cricket, and is pretty strong in his opinions. So he'll always tell me what he thinks. So it's nice to have those people that are that one step removed and see things from a different perspective, different lens, and give different opinions on what you might be saying.
Well, shout out to Bobby Muleman, one of the great men I see regularly down at Muleman's. How hard is it for you to switch off when you're not at cricket? When you're a player, last time you said the kids were a real good distraction to get you away from cricket and mind off cricket. Obviously the same now, they're a bit older, but how are you switching off when you're not at cricket, especially in season when things are sort of, the emotion is up and down, I guess?
It's a good question. I don't think it's something that I've nailed. Being a head coach is really a 24/7 job, particularly when you got 30 plus players and staff that there's always something going on. So how to manage that, how to deal and find that life balance between work and family is a constant juggling act and a constant challenge. But just finding little moments here and there, whether it's going to the gym on a Wednesday morning, getting the opportunity to go to the kids' sport on the weekend when we're out of season, school pickups, drop-offs, those little moments that help try and find a bit of balance. But it's not too often that there's not something going on that's taking up some of your thoughts in season or out of season, depending on where we're at. But yeah, finding those little moments, having little things in place, trying to put my phone away when I get home, for even if it's just for 40 minutes, or make sure we have dinner together as a family, just little things like that you try and stick to that as much as possible to keep a little bit of normality. But it's a challenge.
Speaking of kids, we have a lot of parents that listen to this podcast who are they're the number one mentor for their kids. What are you looking for in younger players, young kids that are potentially coming into your program? What are the values in a young player that you like to see?
There's always going to be talented kids that come through systems. I think two things that stand out for me is work ethic and coachability. To me, that tells me that we've got a player who wants to learn, wants to get better, is never satisfied, is willing to do the work. So they're probably the two things. We have values within our WA program of trust, humility, and being committed, and so we look at those values, particularly with the young guys who come through, and they're really simply about wanting to get better, wanting to be part of a team, and wanting to help the team, having that work ethic, but equally doing what you say you're going to do as well. And so they're the kind of things that we try and build within our squad. But our young players who come into our group, they're certainly some of the attributes that we're looking for.
Yep. And now you've been in this coaching game for a while. What do you think makes a good coach?
I think communication is the ultimate key, I think, to coaching. It's how do you communicate with your players? How do you understand them to then try and get the best out of them? How do you teach? How do you collaborate with them? How do you empower them to give them the best opportunity to become the best players that they can be? So there's the technical knowledge, the tactical knowledge that comes with being a coach, but ultimately the communication skills, how you get your messages across, and how you deliver that, and how that's understood by your players is ultimately, I think, what makes a good coach. You have incredible ability to influence players, and so not underestimating that, and making sure that you're doing the best possible job for them that you can as well.
Yeah, awesome. Now, let's shift a little bit back to your playing career. You had an amazing period which got you selected into the test team, and then you went an amazing run during your test career where you averaged 60. You were being compared to Bradman. Before that, you got 1,358 runs at an average of 104 in Sheffield Shield cricket. I want to take you back to what you said on our last podcast. You said, I just had a freak 12 months where everything clicked. I had really good processes in place with how I prepared for each game. And so I went through a period where I got starts in every game, and then I was really hungry. Once I got in, no one was going to get me out. And I went through the whole 12 to 18-month period where I felt very confident every time I walked to the crease and knew that if I got past my first 20 or 30 balls, they weren't getting me out. So let's talk about hunger. You said there like you were hungry. What is hunger? Where does hunger come from? And surely throughout your career, you were sort of hungry to be the best you can be. But what do you think that is that clicked for you in that sort of back end of your career, I guess?
Well, firstly, I sounded pretty happy with myself back then. But it's hunger is just that desire to keep being the best that you possibly can be, and never being satisfied. I think that's the really simple way to describe it. And I guess that was the feeling that I had at the time, was that if I got in, it was not going to be me that was going to get myself out. It was going to have to be something from the opposition that was going to have to change the course of events, because there was this hunger, whatever you want to call it, to just make as many as I possibly could. And I guess the mental processes and applications and the maturity and experience that all combined and I had at that time allowed me to do it for as long as I possibly could, because every batter who goes out there wants to bat for as long as they possibly can, score as many runs as they possibly can, but there'll come a time where they'll make a poor decision, or they'll make a slight error in the way that they go about things, and then you're out and you're walking back to the change rooms going, well, what's just happened here? When I was in that place, I was mentally strong enough to be able to not make those mistakes. On another day, if mid-on and mid-off were up and I was facing an off-spinner, running down the wicket and hitting him back over his head just seemed like the right decision to make. But when I was in that mentality, that was just a risk that I didn't need to take, because that was just a way that they might get me out. But if I didn't take that risk on, I knew that was an option that wasn't going to be a problem, and that I would still be able to score runs. So it's a mixture of a lot of things, but ultimately I think I was just in a great place mentally, physically, emotionally, tactically, technically, that gave me the best chance to be out there for as long as possible.
And it was just after you'd been dropped from the ODI side. So was there an element of like, I need to prove these guys wrong? Was there an element of day-to-day thinking leading into games of, I'm going big this week, as opposed to maybe other times in your career where it's just like show up and hope that you do well, but there was this real determination at that point in your career, do you think?
I don't think it was to prove people wrong. If anything, it felt like the distraction, maybe distraction is not the right word, of international selection. I thought I was done. I thought my international career was over. And so that element of things about the pressure that I was putting on myself to perform all of a sudden got removed. I'm done. I'm past 30. I've played a few white ball games for Australia. It's been great, but that's probably done now, and I can just focus on leading and playing good cricket for WA. So maybe just made things simpler and a bit clearer.
Yep. And on our previous podcast, we spoke about the Ashes Test series, and you said in the fourth Test when you got some runs, I think, you said you put away your cover drive and you said you were blocking half volleys and you were waiting for them to bowl straight, cuts and pulls because that was your strengths. You said it wasn't pretty. I watched it back. I didn't actually play very well. And I think Chris Rogers, who you know obviously well, played a lot with a friend of ours, he told me, he's relayed a story from you that when you got your 1,350 runs and that season, you were batting really well, but you weren't sort of hitting the ball at your best every innings. Every innings wasn't easy and you had to fight a lot of the time, but you did have good processes. You did know your game. So something I say to a lot of the young players that I work with is when we watch a player, they look like they're always in control. They look like they're at their best. We can't tell when they're not at their best unless they tell us. But obviously, give us an insight into that period in your career. Was the game just so easy, or were you still having to fight and figure out things and problem solve as you were going?
Yeah, first class cricket is never easy. We talk about that period where personally I was able to have some success, but it certainly still didn't come easily. And that's what I talk to our young players about as well, is I can count on one hand how many times I've actually played an innings where every ball's hit the bat or the middle of the bat, or I've hit the ball where I wanted it to go, and I probably don't even need all the fingers on that one hand to for those innings, because it was a constant battle. First class cricket's hard work, and even now you watch some of our guys play Shield cricket, and they'll walk off and the exact same thing. You think they've played pretty well there, and they've walked off going, I felt absolutely horrible there, whether it's the timing of your movements or whether you just don't feel like the ball's hitting the bat where you want it to, or it's going where you want it to. Or you've played and missed it a couple, or the wicket's doing something slightly different, or the pressure of the game situation that's part of your thinking as well. So there's always plenty going on. There's always it's always a battle, not only against the opposition but internally as well. And it's just how do you put all that distraction aside, focus on the next ball, and that's the most important thing. And then whatever happens there, have that process to then make sure that you'll be able to repeat it again and again. So simple answer is it never felt easy.
And that's such a good message, I think, for young players. I share a video of Steve Smith, a 15-second video I show young players where after the Ashes, where he averaged 137, and he said, I wasn't hitting the ball at my best. And Graham Swan was on Channel 5 or whatever it was, goes, you're joking. And Smith goes, no, I wasn't hitting the ball at my best, but I was making good decisions for long periods. And I think when I was young, and I know so many young players value how they're going with how they're feeling and how well they're hitting the ball. And to sort of share that you averaged 100 in Shield cricket and you were struggling a lot of the time or fighting, I think is just such a great message for young players.
Yeah, I think a lot of the players that I see today are striving for perfection, and that's not real. And so it's understanding and being okay with that, and just working out your own method, your own processes to be able to do it the best way you possibly can. And the biggest part of batting is being able to put aside what's just happened and then refocus on what's coming up. And if you can do that and have a process that you can consistently do that, well, you give yourself the best chance. But perception's not real. Perfection's not real. And so while we can try and chase it, we can also get ourselves into trouble trying too hard to find it.
So how do you then, that's a fantastic point, but how do you juggle not being satisfied with what you said before and you watch the best players. Marnus got 190 in the Shield final, punched his bat when he got out because he wasn't satisfied. He wanted to do more. How do you juggle not being satisfied but not trying to be perfect?
Well, if you understand that you can't be perfect, then you'll be okay, because then you're always looking for little ways to get better, and you're always working hard to try and continue to try and get there. But as long as you're not using that in a negative fashion, because I've just mishit a ball or I've just got out, and you beat yourself up about it, then all that is learnings for the next opportunity that you're able to get. So, and I watch that a lot with our guys who want everything to be perfect, feel perfect, go perfectly. But I keep reminding them that perfect's not what we're going to achieve. We can try and get there, but let's just try and get the best version of ourselves that we can.
Awesome, amazing advice. Now, before we finish, we've given the members of our cricket mentoring community, our online platform where we've got players from 24 countries around the world, the opportunity to ask our guests questions. And so this has come from Craig, and he said, as a father, how do you help your child deal with the different advice from different people? My son is 12 and plays in community cricket and district cricket, so he has at least 3 different people giving him advice.
Yeah, great question, and very relevant, because I've got a 13-year-old son who's doing the same thing at the moment, and it's quite funny because he doesn't listen to me, but he'll listen to most of his other coaches. He actually came to me last season and asked if I knew any good cricket coaches that he could pass on their details. So I'll pass your details on, mate. But that challenge is ever constant, regardless of if you're 12 or if you're 30. There's always going to be people who are really well-intentioned, who want to try and help you become the best you can, and are going to give you different bits of advice. The art of playing cricket or being the best version of yourself that you can be is being able to take the advice and working out what works and what doesn't. And so that's the coachability part that I was talking about, wanting to learn, wanting to get the information, but then working out whether it's actually going to work for you or not. So easier to do the older that you get and the more experience that you get. But as a 12-year-old, I think it's just about trying different things, being okay if they don't work, and being okay to say, thanks, appreciate your advice and your help, but that's not working for me at the moment, so I'm going to try and do this instead. And that's coaching, but that's helping people evolve and get better as well. So people can get confused when they get lots of different messages from different people and they want to try and please people by wanting to try and do everything. But ultimately, we're always our own best coach as an athlete, and so working out what feels right, what doesn't feel right, what works, what doesn't. It's trial and error, and that's the beauty of training, working to try and get better.
And I think what I've seen is as the player gets older and better, there's more opinions come. And fortunately, as you get older, you process things a bit better and you can start to work out what works for you. But when Craig, your son, gets to 16, 17, 18, he might have 5, 6, 7, 8 people. And as Vogesy just said, it's about filtering and trying and working things out. Now, our second question, or person to ask question, was from Mishan. He's got 2 questions. How do you as the coach, help players overcome slumps or confidence issues?
Yeah, that's one of the great challenges of coaching, and particularly in cricket, because it happens. There's loss of form, loss of confidence that nearly everyone goes through it at different times throughout their career. Some bounce out of it quicker than others. Often it's something really small that can make big change. I guess how we try and approach it as a coach and as a coaching unit is how do we find just little ways of having success at training, and whether that might be a really simple drill or a really slight change that then helps the player feel better about how they're going about things. Ultimately, the best way to overcome form slumps or confidence slumps is by performance, but it's just trying to help guys get into the best frame of mind through, whether that's through making sure they're really clear on their processes, they're their mental skills, how they're are they clear about what they're trying to do when they're out there, and that's probably the hardest bit, because when you're lacking confidence or you're in a form slump, clarity is what you need, but you've probably got so many different things running through your mind, different distractions, and so trying to find a way to get that clarity, but then finding little ways to find small wins, try and find little bits of confidence within training drills to try and help them just to start feel a bit better about how they go about things. So no exact science, no perfect way of doing it. Otherwise, we'd all get through them pretty quickly. But it's something that everyone goes through it at different times, and different people deal with it differently as well.
And one thing I reckon is when the best players go through form slumps, which they all do, they build that hunger or whatever that sort of desire is. They say, when I get in, I'm going to make sure I make it count. Like I think of David Warner after his 2019 Ashes when he came back and he got a 300 and he scores after that. Smith, Coley, Williamson, Root, when they all had sort of 12 or 18 months low on form, they all got back into form and went massive. So I feel like understanding that the form slump is part of what you do, but really being hungry that when you do start to get back into some form, you make it count.
Yeah, I think understanding that it will change, and you're spot on in terms of when it does, make sure you're going big again.
Yeah. Now, one of the biggest struggles, I think, for the modern day player is transitioning between formats and being able to sort of be able to hit the ball out the park in T20 cricket if that's their role, but then also play red ball cricket where the ball's moving around. And I think there's two very different sort of techniques these days in hitting and batting. And second question from Mishan is, how do you prepare your team for different formats?
Yeah, we try and stretch our players. The game asks them more now than ever to flip between the different formats, whether that's Shield cricket, 50 over cricket, or then obviously when we get into T20 cricket. And you don't always necessarily get the perfect lead in to each of those competitions, or if you've got a 50 over game a day either side of a Shield game, and how do you get guys ready for that, and why you can do specific training for different skill sets for the different formats. We try and stretch the guys even within training sessions. So we might have 3 nets going where one's a red ball net, one's a 50 over net, one's a T20 net, and how can you, in such a short space of time, can you actually adapt between nets? And that's an extreme version of trying to make those transitions. But if you can start to do it within those net sessions, then if you've got a day or two to be able to then transition, I still think it comes back to your base game, particularly for batters. The stronger your base game is, I think the easier it is for you to transfer. And then the mental side of things, and the risk profiling and the risks that you're willing to take in the shorter forms of the game. But yeah, just exposing the guys to, can you in one net try and hit a ball over long off for 6, and in the next net face a good length ball swinging away at the top of off with a brand new red ball, and how you're going to deal with those challenges. So that's from a batting side of things. And then equally with the bowling, can you hit the top of off or go into the next net and execute a wide Yorker, and just try and transition the skills and the mental side of it as well.
Brilliant. And thank you to Craig and Mishan who asked those questions, members from the cricket mentoring community. Vogesy, that is it. We've been nearly going for 55 minutes, and it's been fascinating as always. It's been over 6 years since we had you on, and you've achieved some amazing things as a coach. You've just re-signed with WA for 2 more years. So I wish you all the best, and a few more titles coming to the West, hopefully. And then, as everyone says, hopefully there's a green and gold shirt coming your way post that. What do you sort of hope for the next sort of few years in your coaching career?
I love what I do at the moment. I'm really excited about the next couple of years of WA cricket. We've got a tremendous group of people, staff and players, who have had amazing success over the last 3 seasons, but I think there's still a lot more to come, and that's what drives me. That's what I get excited about at the moment. We begin our pre-season next week, and really looking forward to seeing the guys and getting back stuck into things, because that's WA cricket's been such a big passion of mine for most of my life, and that's what continues to drive me. It's great to get the experience that I've just had over in India, and I can take some nice lessons and implement that into our program as well. So for these next couple of years, I'm really focused on helping us continue to achieve what we want to do, and hopefully we see a couple more of our players representing Australia in national colours as well. And if we can do that, then hopefully it'll be another couple of good seasons.
And so last question is, how do you keep the group motivated? They've done so much. They've won so much, 8 out of 9 trophies. How do you show up next week to pre-season and say, right, boys, let's go again?
Yeah, people ask me that a lot, and it's actually not hard at all. We've got a highly motivated group of people. We've got a really big squad. We've got over 30 players in our squad. And so to only fit 11 players in each week is a difficult thing to do. Not that generally we see them all at the same time, but we've got young guys who are desperate to get opportunity, who had a little bit of a taste of it last year. Through national selection, through injury, we got tested with the depth within our squad, but we saw guys stand up. We saw that next man in mentality where they came in, performed their role and did really well, and they've had a bit of a taste of it now, and they want more, and they're desperate to keep driving, keep improving it, and they'll keep putting pressure on our senior guys who have performed wonderfully well over this period, but they know that these young guys are coming as well, and that provides that really healthy competition. And so I don't have to work too hard in terms of trying to motivate these guys. Their internal drive, their self-motivation is absolutely there, and they want to be part of it, and that's the most important bit. They want to be part of this successful era. They want to be the ones getting the job done out on the field. So we just need to put the framework around that and make sure that they're ready to go.
Well, Vogesy, thank you for your time. You're a WA great and great man off the field, so congratulations on everything and all the best for this season and beyond. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Skulls. Cheers, mate.
If you enjoyed this episode or any of our content, then please do me a big favour and subscribe to our channel. The more subscribers we get, the bigger the guests we can get on and continue to help you on your journey of becoming the best you can be.